The morning sun cast long shadows across the crystalline spires of Valethia Prime, the jewel of the Terran colonial empire. Queen Isabella Vex stood at the observation deck of her palace, watching the daily parade of alien dignitaries and human officials crossing the grand plaza below. Her empire stretched across 17 star systems, a testament to humanity's relentless expansion into the cosmos. At her side stood Captain Marcus Chen, leader of the Queen's Guard, his black uniform bearing the golden phoenix insignia that struck fear into enemies across the galaxy. The Queen's Guard was no ordinary military unit. They were humanity's finest warriors, genetically enhanced and cybernetically augmented, chosen not just for their combat prowess but for their unwavering loyalty to the crown. "Your Majesty," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper, "General Korath has requested another audience. His third this week." Isabella's lips curved into a cold smile. General Korath Vexmol was her greatest military asset and her greatest threat. The Zephyrian had served the Terran Empire for 2 decades, leading countless victories against rebel factions and alien insurgencies. His tactical brilliance was matched only by his growing arrogance and his dangerous ambition. "Let him come," she replied, her blue eyes never leaving the plaza, "but double the guard presence in the throne room. Something tells me today will be different." Marcus nodded and activated his neural communicator, sending silent orders to his team. Within minutes, 12 members of the Queen's Guard had taken their positions throughout the palace. Each was a master of warfare, equipped with plasma rifles that could cut through starship armor and personal shields that could deflect small asteroid impacts. The throne room doors opened with a resonant hum, and General Korath strode in with his characteristic swagger. The Zephyrian stood nearly 8 feet tall, his scaled skin shimmering with bioluminescent patterns that indicated his elevated emotional state. His forearms moved in calculated gestures, 2 resting on his ceremonial weapons while the other 2 gestured as he spoke. "Your Majesty," Korath began, his voice carrying the subtle harmonics that made Zephyrian's speech sound like controlled thunder. "I come bearing news from the Outer Rim campaigns." Isabella remained seated on her throne, carved from a single piece of Andromedan crystal that seemed to pulse with inner light. "Speak, General, though I suspect this visit is about more than battlefield reports." Korath's eyes narrowed and his bioluminescent patterns shifted to deeper reds and purples. "Indeed, Your Majesty. The campaign against the Helix Rebellion has been successful beyond all projections. We have captured their leadership, seized their weapon caches, and brought 12 systems back under Imperial control." "Excellent work, as always," Isabella replied, though her tone remained neutral. "However," Korath continued, his voice growing more confident, "I believe it is time for changes in our command structure. The human military doctrine, while admirably aggressive, lacks the sophisticated understanding of multi-species warfare that this empire now requires." Captain Chen's hand moved almost imperceptibly toward his weapon, but Isabella raised a single finger and he froze. The other guards remained perfectly still, but their combat systems had quietly activated, sensors scanning for threats and weapons charging to standby power. "Continue, General," Isabella said, her voice deadly calm. Korath stepped closer to the throne, his confidence growing. "I propose a new military hierarchy, one where experience and proven capability determine rank rather than species loyalty. I have prepared detailed plans for restructuring the Imperial forces under more capable leadership." The silence in the throne room was absolute. Even the usual hum of the palace's energy system seemed muted. Isabella studied Korath for a long moment, noting the way his secondary arms had moved to a more aggressive posture, how his bioluminescent patterns now pulsed with the rhythms associated with dominance displays among his species. "You speak of capability, General," Isabella said finally. "Tell me, in your extensive experience, what do you believe makes a capable leader?" Korath's patterns brightened. "Strategic thinking, Your Majesty. The ability to see beyond immediate concerns to long-term consequences. The wisdom to recognize when change is necessary for the good of the Empire." "Interesting philosophy," Isabella mused. "And I suppose you believe you possess these qualities?" "I have demonstrated them repeatedly on the battlefield, Your Majesty. My victories speak for themselves." Isabella stood slowly, her movement causing every guard in the room to shift slightly, their enhanced reflexes preparing for action. Your victories, General, were achieved with human ships, human technology, and human soldiers under your command. Do not mistake the sword for the hand that wields it. Korath's patterns flickered with surprise, then shifted to the angry oranges and reds of wounded pride. Your Majesty, I mean no disrespect, but humanity's time as the dominant force in this galaxy may be ending. The universe is vast, and there are powers out there that dwarf even your impressive empire. Powers like yourself, perhaps? Isabella asked, her voice like silk wrapped around steel. I serve the Empire faithfully, Korath replied, but his stance had become more rigid, more confrontational. I simply believe that service should be rewarded with appropriate authority. Isabella nodded slowly as if considering his words. Around the room, the Queen's Guard remained motionless, but their enhanced senses were analyzing every detail of the conversation, every micro-expression and biochemical change in both the Queen and the General. General Korath, Isabella said finally, you have served admirably, and your contributions to this empire are noted and appreciated. However, I believe there may be some confusion about the nature of authority in my domain. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees, and Korath's bioluminescent patterns shifted to the darker purples associated with uncertainty among his species. I think, Isabella continued, her voice now carrying an edge that could cut diamond, it's time you met the real power behind the Terran throne. Queen Isabella raised her hand, and the massive doors at the far end of the throne room slid open with mechanical precision. General Korath turned to see what had captured the Queen's attention, and his bioluminescent patterns immediately shifted to the pale blues of shock. Through the doorway marched a full company of the Queen's Guard, 50 of humanity's most elite warriors moving in perfect synchronization. But these were not the ceremonial guards Korath had seen before. These soldiers wore full combat armor, their bodies completely encased in sleek, matte black exoskeletons that hummed with barely contained energy. Each guard stood 7 feet tall in their armor, their movements fluid despite the obvious weight of their equipment. Plasma rifles were mag-locked to their backs, while their arms bore integrated weapon systems that could deploy everything from micromissiles to concentrated energy beams. Their helmets displayed no facial features, only a smooth surface that reflected the room's light like a dark mirror. General, Isabella said, her voice carrying clearly across the vast chamber, allow me to properly introduce you to my personal protection detail. Captain Chen stepped forward, his own armor materializing around him as nanomachines flowed from hidden compartments in his uniform. Within seconds, he was transformed from a simple palace guard into a walking weapon platform that radiated lethal capability. The Queen's Guard, Chen said, his voice now electronically modulated through his helmet's speakers, consists of volunteers from every branch of the Terran military. Each candidate undergoes 5 years of enhancement procedures, including genetic modification, cybernetic implantation, and psychological conditioning. Korath's 4 arms tensed as he realized the true scope of what he was witnessing. These weren't just elite soldiers. They were something far beyond anything he had encountered in his decades of military service. Enhancement procedures? Korath asked, his voice betraying the first hint of uncertainty. Isabella smiled, the expression somehow more terrifying than any scowl. Human genetics are remarkably adaptable, General. We discovered early in our expansion that while other species might be naturally stronger or faster or more intelligent in specific areas, humans excel at becoming whatever we need to become. One of the guards stepped forward and removed his helmet, revealing a face that was recognizably human but clearly modified. His eyes glowed with a soft blue light, indicating enhanced visual systems that could see across multiple spectrums. Subdermal armor plating was visible along his jawline and forehead, and when he spoke, his teeth showed the telltale gleam of diamond carbide enhancement. I am Sergeant Torres, the guard said, his voice carrying harmonics that suggested vocal cord modification. Before joining the Queen's Guard, I served in the Titan Defense Force. My enhancements include reinforced skeletal structure, enhanced muscular density, improved cardiovascular efficiency, and integrated neural networks that allow direct interface with combat systems. Another guard removed her helmet, revealing similar modifications but with different specializations. Her skin had a subtle metallic sheen, and her hair moved with unnatural coordination, each strand appearing to respond to her thoughts. Lieutenant Park, she introduced herself. Former special operations now specialized in electronic warfare and system infiltration. My neural implants can interface with any known computer system, and my enhanced nervous system allows me to process data at rates that exceed most artificial intelligence units. General Korath's bioluminescent patterns were now cycling rapidly through the spectrum, indicating severe stress. He had assumed the Queen's Guard were elite but essentially normal human soldiers. The reality was far more disturbing. Each member of the Guard, Isabella continued, represents an investment of approximately 50 million credits and 5 years of the most advanced enhancement procedures available to our science. They are faster than Catherian scouts, stronger than draconian warriors, and more intelligent than cerebrite scholars. Captain Chen stepped closer to Korath, his armored form towering over even the tall Zephyrian. But more importantly, General, we are absolutely, unquestionably loyal to Queen Isabella and the Terran Crown. Our psychological conditioning makes betrayal literally impossible. We cannot even conceive of acting against her interests. Korath took an involuntary step backward. Your Majesty, I had no idea the Guard was so extensively modified. Of course you didn't, Isabella replied, because that information is classified at levels you have never accessed despite your impressive rank. You see, General, you may command our fleets and lead our armies, but you have never been trusted with the true secrets of human power. The Queen stood and began walking down the steps of her throne, each footfall echoing in the now silent chamber. The assembled guards tracked her movement with perfect coordination, their weapon systems automatically adjusting to maintain optimal defensive positioning. You spoke of powers that dwarf our empire, Isabella said as she approached Korath. You mentioned the need for more sophisticated understanding of multi-species warfare, but you failed to grasp the most fundamental truth about humanity's place in this galaxy. She stopped directly in front of the general, close enough that he could see his reflection in her eyes. We are not merely another species competing for resources and territory. We are the apex predators of the cosmos, and we achieve that status not through natural evolution, but through the conscious decision to transcend our biological limitations. Korath's breathing had become labored, his species equivalent of hyperventilation. Your Majesty, I assure you that my loyalty to the Empire remains absolute. If I have given offense, you have given more than offense, General? Isabella interrupted. You have revealed the fundamental flaw in employing alien commanders, no matter how capable they may appear to be. Captain Chen moved to stand beside his queen, his presence a silent reminder of the 50 enhanced warriors surrounding them. The problem, General, is not your competence or even your ambition. The problem is that you cannot truly understand what you serve. The general's patterns had stabilized into the deep purples of fear and submission. I serve the Terran Empire, Your Majesty. I have given my life to its expansion and defense. No, Isabella said softly. You serve what you believe the Terran Empire to be. A powerful but ultimately conventional interstellar government, successful because of superior technology and aggressive expansion. You have never understood that you serve something far more dangerous. The Queen turned and began walking back toward her throne, her movements casual despite the tension filling the room. You see, General, the Terran Empire is not simply a government or even a military force. It is the manifestation of humanity's decision to reject every limitation that nature, physics, or probability tried to impose upon us. Isabella reached her throne but did not sit. Instead, she gestured to the walls of the chamber, and suddenly they became transparent, revealing the true scope of the palace complex. General Korath gasped as he saw layer upon layer of hidden facilities extending deep underground, massive laboratories and manufacturing centers that had been completely invisible from the surface. What you see here, General, represents just one facility among thousands scattered across our territory, Isabella said, each one dedicated to a single purpose: the endless improvement of human capability. Through the transparent walls, Korath could see technicians working on projects that defied his understanding. In one laboratory, humans floated in suspension tanks while robotic systems performed delicate surgeries on their brains. In another, soldiers practiced combat maneuvers that violated the known laws of physics, moving through walls and manipulating gravity itself. The guard you see before you, Captain Chen explained, represents our third-generation enhancement protocols. The first generation simply improved existing human capabilities. The second generation added entirely new systems. The third generation began to blur the line between human and machine. Lieutenant Park stepped forward, and as she did, her hair began to move independently, each strand extending and reshaping itself into delicate sensor arrays. My nervous system is integrated with a quantum processing matrix that allows me to think at speeds approaching those of pure artificial intelligence. But unlike an AI, I retain creativity, intuition, and the capacity for tactical innovation. Sergeant Torres demonstrated by lifting a piece of decorative sculpture that weighed several tons, his enhanced muscles making the task appear effortless. My skeleton has been replaced with a titanium carbide composite that is lighter than bone, but stronger than starship armor. My reaction time has been reduced to less than a millisecond, and my endurance is effectively unlimited. General Korath's mental conditioning began to crack under the weight of these revelations. As a Zephyrian, he had been raised to believe in the natural superiority of his species' four-armed coordination and bioluminescent communication systems. The idea that humans could simply decide to surpass any biological advantage was fundamentally alien to his worldview. But why? Korath asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Why go to such extremes? The Empire is already the dominant force in the galaxy. Isabella's smile was cold and predatory. Because, General, the galaxy is not enough. She gestured again, and the floor of the throne room became transparent as well, revealing a massive holographic display showing the known universe. Hundreds of thousands of star systems were marked in various colors, representing different levels of exploration and colonization. Human expansion has never been about territory or resources, Isabella explained. Those are merely the tools we use to achieve our true objective. We are pursuing something that no other species has ever attempted: absolute transcendence. The display zoomed in on specific sectors, revealing construction projects of staggering scale. Entire solar systems were being converted into massive computational matrices, their planets stripped down to raw materials and rebuilt as components in incomprehensibly complex machines. We are building a civilization that will outlast the heat death of the universe, Isabella continued. A society of enhanced humans who will eventually transcend the need for physical existence entirely. Every conquest, every technological advancement, every enhancement to human capability serves this ultimate goal. Captain Chen activated his helmet's projection system, filling the air with detailed schematics that made Korath's head spin. Fourth-generation enhancement protocols are already in testing. They will allow direct manipulation of matter at the quantum level, consciousness transfer between bodies, and eventually the ability to exist as pure energy. The Queen's Guard serves as the prototype for what all humanity will eventually become, Isabella said. We are not just soldiers. We are the first steps toward a new form of existence that will make the distinction between organic and artificial life meaningless. General Korath struggled to process the implications of what he was learning. Your Majesty, surely other species in the galaxy will resist such transformation? They already are, Isabella replied, though most don't yet realize what they're truly fighting against. The various rebellions and insurgencies we face are not simply political movements. They are the galaxy's immune response to humanity's evolution. The display shifted to show detailed intelligence reports on dozens of alien civilizations. Each one was marked with threat assessments and containment strategies that revealed the scope of human surveillance and infiltration throughout the galaxy. The Helix Rebellion you recently crushed, Isabella continued, was funded and equipped by the Void Touched, an ancient species that recognizes the existential threat we represent to traditional biological life. The Crystalline Collective has been developing weapons specifically designed to disrupt our enhancement technologies. Even species we consider allies are secretly working to limit our expansion. Korath's bioluminescent patterns had faded to the pale grays of despair. Then why employ alien commanders at all? Why trust us with any authority? Isabella approached him again, this time close enough that he could smell the subtle chemical modifications to her metabolism. Because, General, we are not yet ready to reveal our true nature to the galaxy. The transition period requires that we maintain the illusion of being a conventional empire, and that requires alien participation in our military structure. But also, Captain Chen added, his voice carrying a note of genuine respect, because species like yours provide valuable perspective during this transitional phase. Your tactical innovations have genuinely improved our conventional forces, and your insights into multi-species psychology have been invaluable. However, Isabella said, her tone becoming dangerous again, that value depends entirely on your continued acceptance of your role in our hierarchy. The moment an alien commander begins to think they understand our true capabilities well enough to challenge our authority, they become a liability rather than an asset. The general looked around the room at the enhanced humans surrounding him, finally beginning to understand the true scope of his situation. These weren't just elite soldiers. They were representatives of a species that had consciously decided to remake itself into something beyond natural evolution. Your Majesty, Korath said carefully, I believe I may have misunderstood the nature of my position in your service. Indeed you have, Isabella replied. The question now is whether that misunderstanding was a temporary lapse in judgment or a fundamental incompatibility that requires more permanent solutions. The general's patterns shifted to the deep blues of submission and fear as he began to realize just how badly he had miscalculated the balance of power in the room. The silence in the throne room stretched for long moments as General Korath processed the magnitude of his error. His species' natural bioluminescence had dimmed to almost nothing, indicating the depth of his psychological shock. Around him, the Queen's Guard remained perfectly still, their enhanced senses monitoring his vital signs and stress indicators with mechanical precision. Isabella returned to her throne but did not sit. Instead, she activated a hidden control panel, and the chamber's walls began displaying real-time feeds from across the Terran Empire. Each screen showed a different aspect of humanity's true capabilities that had been hidden from their alien allies. Perhaps a demonstration would be more instructive than mere explanation, Isabella said. Captain Chen, please contact Admiral Harrison at the Kepler Research Station. Chen's helmet projected a holographic communication array, and within seconds a human figure appeared in the center of the room. Admiral Harrison was clearly enhanced, his movements too fluid and his eyes too bright to be entirely natural. Behind him, through the communication link, Korath could see laboratories filled with technologies that defied his understanding of physics. Your Majesty, Admiral Harrison said, his voice carrying harmonics that suggested vocal cord modification. Perfect timing. We just completed the first successful test of Project Prometheus. Excellent, Isabella replied. Please demonstrate for our guest. The Admiral gestured to someone off-screen, and suddenly the laboratory behind him was filled with blinding light. When the glare faded, Korath saw something that made his rational mind rebel. Where there had been solid matter moments before, there was now empty space, and where there had been empty space, complex machinery had materialized. Matter conversion at the quantum level, Admiral Harrison explained calmly. We can now rearrange atomic structures at will, converting any material into any other material with perfect efficiency. The implications for manufacturing, construction, and warfare are essentially unlimited. General Korath's legs nearly gave out beneath him. His species had spent millennia developing technologies that could manipulate matter at the molecular level, but what he was witnessing operated on a scale that was orders of magnitude more advanced. This is just one of 17 research projects that reached breakthrough status this month, Isabella said casually. Would you like to see the others, or do you begin to understand the scope of human development? Before Korath could answer, Lieutenant Park stepped forward, her modified hair now forming complex geometric patterns that served as antennae. Your Majesty, I'm detecting elevated stress hormones and neural activity patterns consistent with cognitive overload. The general may be approaching psychological breakdown. Isabella studied Korath with the detached interest of a scientist observing a laboratory specimen. Fascinating. Most alien psychologies have built-in safeguards against accepting information that fundamentally challenges their worldview. General, are you experiencing difficulties processing what you've learned? Korath's voice, when he finally managed to speak, was barely recognizable. Your Majesty, my species has always prided itself on adaptability and tactical flexibility. But what you're showing me, it's not just advanced technology. You're describing the systematic transformation of an entire species into something that transcends biology itself. Finally, Isabella said with satisfaction, you're beginning to understand. Now let me explain why your earlier demands were not merely inappropriate, but actively dangerous to your continued existence. The displays around the room shifted to show detailed psychological profiles of various alien commanders who had served the Empire. Korath recognized many of the names, including several who had mysteriously disappeared or died in accidents over the years. Every alien who reaches a senior position in our military undergoes continuous psychological monitoring, Captain Chen explained. We track stress patterns, loyalty indicators, ambition levels, and most importantly, their developing understanding of human capabilities. There is a critical threshold, Isabella continued, beyond which an alien commander becomes too dangerous to allow continued operation, not because of any malicious intent, but because the knowledge itself represents a security risk that cannot be contained. Sergeant Torres projected a three-dimensional model of the general's psychological profile, showing stress indicators and loyalty measurements over his 20 years of service. Until today, General, your profile remained within acceptable parameters. Your ambition was manageable, your loyalty seemed genuine, and your understanding of human capabilities remained safely limited. However, Lieutenant Park added, your demands today indicated that you had begun to form theories about human society that approached dangerous accuracy. Our psychological models predicted that within 6 months, you would either have to be eliminated or undergo enhancement procedures yourself. Korath's bioluminescent patterns flared with sudden hope. Enhancement? You would consider making me like you? The reaction from the guard was immediate and unanimous. Every enhanced human in the room tensed slightly, their weapon systems powering up to standby mode. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. That, Isabella said coldly, is not a decision that can be made lightly. Enhancement is not simply a matter of improving existing capabilities. It requires the complete reconstruction of consciousness itself. Most alien psychologies cannot survive the process. Admiral Harrison's image flickered as he accessed classified files. We have attempted enhancement procedures on 47 alien subjects over the past decade. 3 survived the initial neural integration. None retained enough of their original personality to be considered the same individual. The human mind, Captain Chen explained, evolved specifically to adapt and change. Our consciousness is naturally modular, allowing us to accept modifications and improvements without losing our core identity. Most alien species developed more rigid neural structures that cannot accommodate fundamental changes. General Korath's patterns shifted to the deep purples of despair. Then what are my options, Your Majesty? If I know too much to remain as I am but cannot be enhanced to join you. Isabella smiled, but there was no warmth in the expression. There is a third option, General. One that requires a level of commitment that few aliens have ever demonstrated. She gestured, and the displays around the room changed to show classified files that had never been shared with any non-human. Complete integration into the human command structure, with full knowledge of our capabilities and objectives, under conditions that make betrayal impossible. Neural monitors, Captain Chen explained. Quantum encrypted communication implants that allow us to monitor your thoughts and emotions in real time. Loyalty conditioning that operates at the subconscious level. Essentially, you would become an extension of human will, retaining your personality and capabilities, but losing the ability to act against our interests. The procedure is not reversible, Lieutenant Park added, and it requires a level of psychological submission that most aliens find impossible to accept. You would in effect become human property, albeit highly valued and respected property. Korath looked around the room at the enhanced humans surrounding him, finally understanding the choice he faced: death transformation into something unrecognizable, or voluntary slavery to a species that had transcended the natural order of the universe. Your Majesty, he said finally, his voice steady despite the terror in his bioluminescent patterns. How long do I have to decide? Isabella's smile became genuinely amused. General, you misunderstand the situation. The choice was made the moment you walked into this room and made your demands. The only question now is whether you accept the inevitable gracefully, or whether we must proceed without your cooperation. The weight of Queen Isabella's words settled over General Korath like a physical force. His enhanced understanding of human nature, developed over decades of military service, finally allowed him to perceive the true scope of his predicament. These were not negotiations or discussions. They were the final moments before his old existence ended permanently. I see, Korath said, his voice carrying the calm resignation of a veteran warrior who recognized inevitable defeat. Then perhaps, Your Majesty, you could explain exactly what this integration process involves. Isabella nodded approvingly. Wisdom at last. Captain Chen, please begin the preliminary neural mapping. Chen approached with a device that looked deceptively simple, a small crystalline headband that pulsed with soft blue light. As he placed it on Korath's head, the general felt a strange tingling sensation that quickly spread throughout his nervous system. The neural mapping process is painless, Lieutenant Park explained, her modified hair now forming complex sensor arrays that monitored the procedure. We're creating a detailed map of your thought patterns, emotional responses, and memory structures. This will allow us to design integration protocols that preserve your personality while ensuring absolute loyalty. On the displays around the room, a three-dimensional model of Korath's brain began forming in real time. The level of detail was staggering. Individual neurons were visible, along with the electrical patterns that represented his thoughts and emotions. Fascinating, Admiral Harrison's image commented from the communication link. Zephyrian neural architecture is more adaptable than we initially projected. The integration success rate should be significantly higher than our estimates. Korath watched his own thoughts being mapped and analyzed, feeling a mixture of wonder and horror at the casual violation of his mental privacy. How many others have undergone this process? You would be the 48th, Isabella replied, but the first of your species. Previous subjects included draconian battle commanders, cerebrite strategic analysts, and even a few representatives from the Void-Touched Collective. Sergeant Torres activated a holographic display showing the locations of these integrated commanders throughout the Empire. They serve in positions of significant authority, commanding fleets and governing systems. Their effectiveness has actually improved after integration, since they no longer waste mental energy on doubts, conflicting loyalties, or personal ambitions that conflict with imperial objectives. The process removes the burden of choice in certain areas, Captain Chen explained. You will retain full autonomy in tactical and strategic decision-making, personal relationships, and creative pursuits. However, any action that conflicts with imperial security or human interests becomes literally unthinkable. As the neural mapping continued, Korath began to notice subtle changes in his perception. The Queen's Guard no longer seemed like threats. Instead, they appeared as extensions of a greater organism that he was being invited to join. The sensation was both disturbing and oddly comforting. The preliminary conditioning has already begun, Lieutenant Park observed, studying the readouts from her sensor arrays. His stress responses are normalizing, and his psychological resistance patterns are weakening. Isabella rose from her throne and approached Korath, studying his changing bioluminescent patterns with scientific interest. Tell me, General, what do you feel right now? Korath considered the question carefully. Acceptance, Your Majesty, and perhaps relief? The burden of constantly evaluating loyalty and weighing personal ambition against duty is exhausting. If that burden could be removed while leaving my capabilities intact. Exactly, Isabella said with satisfaction. Integration is not punishment, it's liberation from the psychological conflicts that plague independent consciousness. You will become more than you ever were, not less. The neural mapping completed and Chen removed the crystalline headband. Immediately, Korath felt a sense of loss as if something vital had been taken away. The casual comfort he had felt moments before was replaced by renewed anxiety and uncertainty. The temporary conditioning effects are wearing off, Admiral Harrison noted. His baseline psychology is reasserting itself. We should proceed quickly to avoid psychological trauma. Isabella nodded. Bring in the integration chamber. A section of the floor slid away, revealing a sophisticated medical facility rising from below. The centerpiece was a tank filled with glowing blue fluid, surrounded by arrays of quantum processors and neural interface equipment that made even the guard's enhancements look primitive. The integration process takes approximately 6 hours, Captain Chen explained as medical technicians emerged from hidden panels to prepare the equipment. During that time, your neural pathways will be restructured to include loyalty conditioning, communication implants, and enhanced cognitive capabilities. Enhanced capabilities? Korath asked, his scientific curiosity overcoming his fear. Lieutenant Park smiled, an expression that was both human and subtly alien. The integration process includes significant improvements to memory capacity, processing speed, and analytical capability. You will retain all of your existing knowledge and skills while gaining access to the collective intelligence network that connects all integrated commanders. Think of it as joining a higher form of consciousness, Isabella explained. You will still be Korath, but you will also be part of something greater. Your tactical innovations will benefit not just your immediate command, but every integrated officer throughout the Empire. Sergeant Torres gestured to the integration chamber. The process cannot be reversed, but our psychological monitoring indicates that subjects who complete integration successfully never desire reversal. The benefits are too significant and the sense of purpose too fulfilling. General Korath approached the chamber, his movements steady despite the magnitude of what he was contemplating. Your Majesty, will I remember this conversation? Will I understand what I've lost? You will remember everything, Isabella assured him. The integration process preserves all memories while adding new framework for interpreting them. You will understand exactly what you've chosen, and you will be grateful for the opportunity. The medical technicians finished their preparations and stepped back. The integration chamber hummed with barely contained energy. Its systems calibrated specifically for Zephyrian physiology, based on the neural mapping they had just completed. One final question, Korath said, turning to face the Queen. After integration, will I still be capable of innovation? Of surprising you with tactical solutions you haven't anticipated? Isabella's smile was genuinely warm for the first time in their conversation. General, that unpredictability is exactly why we value integrated commanders over purely human officers. Your alien perspective, enhanced by human technology and freed from conflicting loyalties, will make you more creative, not less. Captain Chen stepped forward with ceremonial formality. General Korath Vexmol, do you consent to integration into the Terran Imperial Command structure, understanding that this process is irreversible and will fundamentally alter your relationship to your own consciousness? Korath looked around the chamber one final time, seeing the enhanced humans not as captors but as representatives of a future he was being invited to join. His bioluminescent patterns shifted to the deep golds of acceptance and determination. I consent, he said firmly, and I thank you for the opportunity to become more than I ever imagined possible. The integration chamber sealed around General Korath with a soft hiss of pressurizing gases. Through the transparent walls, he could see the Queen's Guard taking positions around the facility, their enhanced senses monitoring every aspect of the procedure. The blue fluid that filled the chamber was warm and surprisingly comfortable, supporting his body while sophisticated medical systems began their work. Neural interface establishment in progress, Lieutenant Park announced, her modified hair forming intricate patterns as she monitored the quantum processors. Initial connectivity achieved. Beginning loyalty matrix installation. Isabella watched the readouts with the focused attention of a master craftsman overseeing a delicate project. Each line of data represented years of research into alien psychology and human enhancement technology. The integration of a Zephyrian commander represented a significant advancement in their long-term objectives. Fascinating, Admiral Harrison's image commented from the communication link. His neuroplasticity is remarkable. The loyalty conditioning is integrating much more smoothly than our projections suggested. Inside the chamber, Korath experienced the most profound transformation of his existence. Wave after wave of new connections formed in his brain, creating pathways that linked his consciousness to vast networks of information and shared experience. He could feel his understanding of the universe expanding exponentially as human knowledge merged with his existing memories. Communication network coming online, Sergeant Torres reported. He's connecting to the integrated command structure. 17 other commanders are welcoming him to the network. Suddenly, Korath was no longer alone in his own mind. He could sense the presence of other integrated officers scattered across the galaxy, the Draconian fleet commander defending the Rim territories, the Cerebrite analyst coordinating supply lines in the core worlds, the void-touched infiltrator gathering intelligence from rebel strongholds. Each retained their individual personality, while sharing a common foundation of absolute loyalty to the Terran Empire. The sensation was indescribable. Instead of the isolation he had known all his life, Korath now felt connected to something infinitely larger than himself. Strategic information flowed through the network at the speed of thought, allowing real-time coordination between commanders separated by thousands of light years. Cognitive enhancement phase beginning, Captain Chen announced. Processing speed increasing by factor of 4. Memory capacity expanding beyond baseline biological limitations. The changes were immediately apparent to Korath. Military campaigns he had planned years ago were suddenly visible in perfect detail, with every tactical decision analyzed and improved by the collective intelligence of the network. He could see patterns in enemy behavior that had been invisible before, understand supply chain logistics with mathematical precision, and anticipate strategic developments with prophetic accuracy. "This is incredible," he whispered, his voice carrying new harmonics as his vocal cords adapted to integrated communication protocols. "I can see everything so clearly now." Isabella smiled with satisfaction. "The integration is proceeding perfectly. His loyalty matrix is stable, cognitive enhancements are within optimal parameters, and his personality core remains intact." But as the process continued, Korath began to understand the true scope of human ambition. Through the network, he accessed classified files that revealed projects spanning millennia. Humanity was not merely building an empire. They were systematically converting the entire galaxy into a single vast organism dedicated to transcendence. He saw plans for the complete transformation of every inhabited system, turning planets into processing nodes for a galactic consciousness that would eventually migrate beyond physical existence entirely. Every species would be given the choice between integration, enhancement, or peaceful extinction. There would be no independent civilizations, no competing philosophies, no conflicts between different forms of life. "The scope is magnificent," Korath breathed, his bioluminescent patterns now pulsing in perfect synchronization with the quantum processors around him. A single unified consciousness spanning the entire galaxy, with humanity as the guiding intelligence. "Now you understand," Isabella said. "What we offer is not conquest in any traditional sense. We offer evolution, the next step beyond the chaos and conflict that has defined galactic civilization for millions of years." Through the network, Korath communicated directly with Admiral Harrison, sharing tactical insights about Outer Rim defenses, while simultaneously receiving updates on research projects from across the Empire. The efficiency was breathtaking compared to the slow, limited communication methods he had used before. "Integration complete," Lieutenant Park announced. "All systems showing optimal function. Welcome to the network, General Korath." The chamber drained and opened, revealing Korath transformed. Physically, he appeared much the same, but subtle changes marked his integration. His bioluminescent patterns now included new colors that allowed communication with human systems, and his eyes held the enhanced awareness of someone connected to a vast collective intelligence. "How do you feel?" Isabella asked. Korath stepped from the chamber with movements that were more fluid and coordinated than before. "Complete, Your Majesty. For the first time in my existence, I feel like I'm part of something greater than myself. The loneliness is gone." Captain Chen handed him a new uniform, black with golden trim that marked his status as an integrated commander. The fabric incorporated communication systems that would keep him connected to the network, regardless of his location in the galaxy. "Your first assignment," Isabella said, "will be to return to the Outer Rim and begin the systematic integration of your most capable officers. We're entering the next phase of expansion, and we'll need experienced commanders who understand both human objectives and alien psychology." Korath accepted the assignment with enthusiasm that surprised his former self. The personal ambitions that had driven him to challenge the Queen now seemed petty and short-sighted. His purpose was clear: to help guide the galaxy toward its inevitable transformation. "There is one thing I must ask," Korath said, his new vocal harmonics allowing him to communicate with perfect clarity. "What happens to species that refuse integration or enhancement? Not every civilization will accept what we offer." Isabella's expression became coldly practical. "Extinction is always an option, but rarely necessary. Most species, when faced with the choice between joining a galactic consciousness or remaining isolated and primitive, make the logical decision. And those that don't?" Korath pressed. Lieutenant Park answered with the casual tone of someone discussing routine maintenance. "The galaxy is vast, but not infinite. Unintegrated civilizations represent pockets of chaos in an ordered system. They are gradually contained and then eliminated, not out of malice, but out of necessity. Korath found that this prospect didn't disturb him as it once would have. Through the network, he could see the mathematical certainty of galactic transformation. Individual civilizations were like cells in a growing organism. Those that adapted and integrated would thrive, while those that remained independent would be naturally eliminated by evolutionary pressure. "I understand," he said, and meant it completely. "When do I return to my command?" "Immediately," Isabella replied. "Your fleet is already being equipped with integration facilities based on the data we collected from your procedure. Within 1 year, every officer in your command structure will have joined the network." As Korath prepared to leave, he felt a profound sense of gratitude toward the Queen and her guard. They had given him something he never knew he needed: purpose beyond personal advancement, connection beyond individual consciousness, and a role in the greatest project in galactic history. "Your Majesty," he said with genuine reverence, "thank you for showing me what I could become." Isabella nodded graciously. "Thank you, General, for choosing to become it willingly. The network is stronger with your addition, and the galaxy moves one step closer to unity." 6 months after General Korath's integration, Queen Isabella stood once again at the observation deck of her palace, watching the daily activities of her ever-expanding empire. The plaza below bustled with activity, as representatives from dozens of species conducted the business of galactic civilization, unaware that they were witnessing the final stages of independent existence. Captain Chen approached with his customary silent efficiency, his enhanced form moving with the fluid grace that marked all members of the Queen's Guard. "Your Majesty, General Korath is requesting permission to address the Imperial Council regarding Phase 3 implementation." Isabella smiled, remembering the ambitious and ultimately naive Zephyrian who had challenged her authority in this very palace. "Granted. And Captain, activate full recording protocols. I believe this session will be historically significant." The Imperial Council chamber was a marvel of engineering that reflected humanity's approach to galactic governance. Representatives from hundreds of species sat in carefully arranged tiers, each group positioned according to their integration status and strategic value to the Empire. At the center, a holographic display showed real-time updates from across human territory. General Korath entered the chamber with confident strides, his integrated nature immediately apparent to those who knew what to look for. His bioluminescent patterns now incorporated the golden hues that marked network connectivity, and his movements showed the enhanced coordination that came with neural optimization. "Honored representatives," Korath began, his voice carrying across the chamber with perfect clarity, "I come before you today to discuss the future of our galaxy, and the role each of your civilizations will play in that future." The assembled delegates shifted uncomfortably. Many had heard rumors about the integration process, though few understood its true scope or implications. The fact that one of their most respected military commanders was now obviously modified raised questions that many were afraid to ask. 6 months ago, Korath continued, I stood in the royal throne room and made demands of our queen based on my limited understanding of human capabilities and objectives. I believed myself qualified to guide imperial policy based on my military experience and strategic knowledge. He paused, allowing his bioluminescent patterns to shift through the spectrum in a display that conveyed both amusement and profound understanding. I was wrong about everything. Ambassador Thex Ra of the Draconian hegemony leaned forward in his seat. General, there have been disturbing reports about changes in command structure and unusual modifications to senior officers. Perhaps you could clarify the situation? Korath's smile was both familiar and subtly alien. Of course, Ambassador. The changes you've observed represent the next phase of galactic evolution. Humanity has offered me and many others the opportunity to transcend the limitations of our biological heritage. The chamber erupted in concerned murmurs as delegates began to understand the implications of what they were hearing. Several representatives activated personal communicators, sending urgent messages to their home governments. The process is called integration, Korath explained calmly. It involves the installation of neural networks that connect individual consciousness to a larger collective intelligence while preserving personality and capability. The result is enhanced cognitive function, perfect coordination with imperial objectives, and liberation from the psychological conflicts that plague independent consciousness. Minister Vel Othen of the Christek Consortium stood abruptly, You're describing the systematic elimination of free will. This is an abomination that violates every principle of sentient rights. On the contrary, Korath replied, his voice carrying new harmonics that seemed to resonate directly with the listeners' minds. Integration enhances free will by removing the barriers to optimal decision-making. I am more myself now than I ever was before, freed from the burden of doubt, conflicting loyalties, and personal ambitions that clouded my judgment. Through the quantum communication network, Korath shared real-time tactical analysis with the 17 other integrated commanders scattered across the galaxy. Their collective intelligence processed the emotional responses and strategic implications of each delegate's reaction, predicting with mathematical precision how the session would unfold. The choice before each of your civilizations is simple, Korath continued. Join the network voluntarily and retain your cultural identity within the greater whole, or remain independent and face the inevitable consequences of evolutionary obsolescence. Ambassador Thex-Ra's voice carried the authority of a species that had ruled multiple star systems for millennia. And if we refuse both options? If we choose to remain free and fight for our independence? Korath's patterns shifted to the deep blues of genuine sympathy. Then you will die, Ambassador. Not from malice or cruelty, but from the same natural forces that eliminate any organism that cannot adapt to changing conditions. The holographic display at the center of the chamber activated, showing real-time footage from across the galaxy. Dozens of systems that had once housed independent civilizations now showed the geometric structures of human transformation projects. Planets had been converted into computational matrices, their former inhabitants either integrated into the network or relocated to reservation worlds. This is the reality of galactic development, Korath explained. Humanity is not conquering the galaxy, they are becoming the galaxy. Every star system, every planet, every form of life will eventually be part of a single organism dedicated to transcendence beyond physical existence. Through his network connection, Korath felt the presence of Queen Isabella observing the session. Her approval flowed through the quantum channels like warm sunlight, reinforcing his sense of purpose and belonging. I know this is difficult to accept, Korath continued, addressing the increasingly agitated delegates. Your species evolved to value independence, competition, and individual achievement. But those traits, while useful for biological evolution, become obstacles when transitioning to post-biological existence. You're talking about the end of everything we are, Minister Vel Othen protested. Our cultures, our philosophies, our unique perspectives on existence. No, Korath said firmly. I'm talking about preserving those things within a framework that will allow them to survive beyond the heat death of the universe. Independent civilizations last for millions of years at most. The network will endure for trillions. The chamber fell silent as delegates contemplated the scope of what they were being offered. Some showed the bioluminescent or biochemical signs of fear, while others displayed the calculating patterns of species, considering strategic options. How long do we have to decide? Ambassador Thex-Ra asked finally. Korath accessed the network's strategic databases, consulting with the collective intelligence about optimal timeline projections. Integration facilities are being constructed in every major system. Full implementation will begin within 2 years. Those who volunteer for early integration will have more influence in determining how their species' cultural elements are preserved within the network. And resistance? The ambassador pressed. Will be futile, Korath replied with the calm certainty of someone who had access to humanity's true capabilities. The Queen's Guard alone could pacify the entire galaxy if necessary, but that would be wasteful and destructive. Integration preserves everything valuable, while eliminating only the chaos and conflict that have plagued galactic civilization for millions of years. As the session concluded, Korath felt the profound satisfaction that came from serving a purpose greater than himself. The delegates filed out in various states of shock, fear, and calculation, but their emotional responses were irrelevant. The mathematical certainty of galactic transformation would proceed regardless of their feelings about it. Through the network, he sensed Queen Isabella's pleasure at his performance. The session had achieved its objective. Notification had been delivered, choices had been explained, and the timeline for universal integration was now common knowledge. Standing in the empty chamber, surrounded by the technological marvels that represented humanity's approach to governance, General Korath understood that he had played a crucial role in the most important moment in galactic history. The age of chaos was ending, and the age of unity was about to begin. The galaxy would become human, whether it chose to or not. And that, Korath realized with deep satisfaction, was exactly as it should be.